Are you looking for inspiring conversations about faith, film, and life? You're in the right place. Here's the host who knows the right questions to ask, Father Edward Looney.
Hey everybody, it's Father Edward Looney here. Grateful that you're tuning in once again. And I think we have an exciting conversation, especially because it's Memorial Day. It's a day here in the United States. No mail, it's a holiday, but it's more than just a day off. It's more than a day of just grilling and being out on the lake or whatever you might do on the holiday, but it's a day of remembrance. And so we remember the forgotten war dead. We remember those who have given their life in service to our country. I thought, what better way than to honor those people who gave their lives in the military services than to have a conversation with Father Peter Pomposello. I found him on Twitter or on Instagram, of all places. Just started following him and really enjoyed his content. I'm a Mundelein grad, and I saw he was at Mundelein a few months back, walking the campus, giving a few little walking talks on Instagram. So really seems like a very good priest, of course, a great character and personality. And he also works in the recruitment for military chaplains for the Archdiocese of the Military Services, an assignment that will be coming to an end for him soon, and he'll be getting a new one. But we'll talk all about that and more now. So thanks so much, Father Peter, for taking time out of your busy day to join us for this conversation.
Thanks so much, Father. I really appreciate you having me on. And what a beautiful thing for us to remember Memorial Day. It's different. It has a different quality than Veterans Day, and a lot of people miss that. They think of Veterans Day as a day to celebrate the soldiers who have served, but Memorial Day is a day to remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. And there is a bit of a somber note to it, and it's good that all your listeners out there maybe say a prayer for those who made the ultimate sacrifice, for those who basically, in signing up in the Army, Navy, the Air Force, they gave the people of this nation a blank check, and they were willing to pay with it to the fullest. But when they joined to serve, so God bless those who made the ultimate price, made the ultimate sacrifice.
And this is also a day, too, where a few days before, and so I'm the pastor of a parish with a Catholic school, and our students earlier in the week, they went to the cemetery and they placed flags in the cemetery at the markers of graves of veterans. So that's something very commonly done around Memorial Day, as again, kind of bringing home the fact that these are people who served our country, who are deceased, and to remember them all, but especially those who have died in combat. So, Father Peter, you're a priest of the Archdiocese of New York, but yet
Correct.
you serve for the Archdiocese of the Military Service. Maybe just give us a little bit of your vocation story, your call to the priesthood, and then your call to leave New York or be released from New York and go to the military services.
So I had thought about being a priest in high school, but I kind of put it off. And I didn't come back to the idea of becoming a priest until after I had been commissioned in the Army as an infantry officer after college. And I enjoyed it. I always wanted to be a soldier, but there was no opportunity in the early 90s. The military had been downsizing after the Persian Gulf War. So I had become a school teacher. And then when I discovered my vocation, or I should say, finally answered the call to this vocation to be a priest, one of my first thoughts was, hey, I should do this for the Army. And it's a long road. It's a long road to get there. And the most important thing is you'd need your bishop. The bishop of a diocese needs to be in agreement to ordain you for his diocese, as well as releasing you for a period of time to the military, whatever branch that might be. And for me, I wanted to be in the Army, and it looked good for my first bishop, but God rest him, John Cardinal O'Connor, died while I was a seminarian. And then God bless my Archbishop who ordained me, Cardinal Egan. He ordained me, but he wanted me for the diocese. So I kind of resigned myself to the fact that I'd serve in the diocese, and I didn't know if I'd ever get back into uniform again. I served 10 years, and I was 4 years I was 2 years in Lower Westchester, and then 2 years in Manhattan. Then I was a pastor in the Bronx. And then he retired, and my current Archbishop, Cardinal Dolan, gave me the privilege, the opportunity to serve God and country as a priest and as a chaplain for the archdiocese for the military. So this is where it gets interesting. You'll appreciate this as a priest, but I think your parishioners will also appreciate this as well. He releases me to the ecclesial authority of Archbishop Timothy Broglio. He's the Archbishop for the military services. He endorses me. Every chaplain in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, VA hospital, Air Force Guardians, all of those services, they're endorsed by one Catholic bishop, and that's the Archbishop for the military services. So he endorses them, and they serve because he says that they are fit to serve. Their faculties come through him. But it's very curious, and this is where I know you'll find this interesting, and we'll talk about it to flesh it out for your listeners, that he doesn't assign his priests like a regular bishop does. A bishop, normally a bishop of a diocese, has full authority and knowledge and the planning and the organization to assign his priests to particular assignments. But it's a little different in the military, where we're given these faculties, but then the Army actually gives us these assignments, and it's the responsibility of the priest to tell his archbishop, the Archbishop of the military, hey, I've just been assigned here and I'm being reassigned there. I'm actually in between assignments right now as we speak. I'm just reporting to a new assignment at Fort Liberty, where I'll take on the duties of a brigade chaplain, and I'm finishing up. I'll always have a heart for this recruiting work, and people can still find me on fr.uncle.sam. And if you're thinking about being a priest and being a soldier, I can get you to the current recruiting team.
Okay. Well, and so are you recruiting seminarians? Are you recruiting priests? Like, who are you recruiting?
Yes, all of the above. So we have three major categories for recruiting. First category is the priest who's already ordained. And probably the most difficult ask, the most generous ask on the part of a bishop is to send us an ordained priest to serve in the military full-time on active duty. And it's just a great way for us to serve the men and women in uniform and their families. I can speak for the Army. We have less than 90 priests in the Army, and we need about 350 to 400 priests to really serve soldiers and families as they need it. So it's critical. We just don't have enough priests. We also need priests for the reserves, where they could be the citizen soldier. They could be the reservist and still stay in their diocese, work at their parish, but then generally one weekend a month, and there's creative ways of doing this so that they could fulfill their obligations without even missing a Sunday regularly, but to serve in the parish and in uniform. Generally speaking, you hear that expression, a weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year. We're also looking for seminarians and young men discerning a vocation to the priesthood to consider making a sacrifice of this sacrificial life of the priesthood to God and country as a soldier and as a priest. And so we work with them as what we call chaplain candidates. And a chaplain candidate is a young man who's been accepted into seminary and who is working toward becoming a priest, all the while as a commissioned officer, training in the summertime, so that when he is ordained, he'll be qualified to be a chaplain and a priest for the Army.
What's the day in the life of a military chaplain? I know it's probably different for everybody, but could you just paint a little picture of, for me as a parish priest, like, okay, I wake up, I pray my breviary, I go to the church, I celebrate mass, I go to the office, I have a funeral, I meet with couples who are preparing for marriage, like, I teach religion. So kind of almost every day is kind of predictable for me. So I'm guessing it's probably not the same for a military chaplain. So what's the day in a military chaplain look like?
It's very different, and it also depends on the assignment, the current assignment of that chaplain. So I could break it down. I'll break it down this way. The assignment, the first assignment that a chaplain will get most likely is to a battalion-sized element, about 500 soldiers. And I was in 2 infantry battalions. I was in an aviation battalion, and it was the typical day there was I would be up at about 5 at work for 6 for a quick meeting with the bosses. We'd be dressed to go to the gym, but we'd have a huddle in the morning to see what does the week look like, where are the soldiers being tasked to do their work and their duties. And that's important for me to be there as a touch point so I know where to go. Are they going to be at the range firing weapons? Are they going to be in garrison preparing for a training trip and cleaning their equipment? Or are they going to be training on the parade field? So it would be good for me to go to that meeting to know where the soldiers are so I could be with them. Then I'd work out in the morning. I'd go home. I'd shower and change into this uniform and say some prayers. Maybe even stop by the chapel. There were mornings that I would even stop by the chapel on my way back to the office for 9:30. And then I'd have appointments in the office, and I would talk to soldiers that were looking to talk to me. I would also prepare events. Chaplains prepare events for what we call resiliency. Some events are religious in nature, but some of them are just patriotic in nature or maybe morale-based events. So I have the opportunity to take soldiers kayaking for an afternoon, and I could give them training on communication skills and on how to meet adversity. How do you meet adversity, and how do you meet the challenges of adversity? How do you keep working? Some of them are not religious in nature, but most of what I do is, of course, going to be religious in nature. I would prepare retreats for married couples, and I would prepare and invite, and then do all of that kind of work in my office. Also doing the staff work of an officer, because I'm in a unique position as a chaplain to have a pulse on the morale of the unit. I don't lead troops. I'm not in charge of troops. So the troops also know that they can come and talk to me in complete confidentiality. They can talk about anything they like, and I'm not going to break their confidence. But it also gives me an idea of the morale and the pulse of the unit. Then at the noon break around 11:30, I would leave and I would go to the chapel. I'd have mass every day at noon. So the soldiers were free to take their lunch hour. If they wanted to come to mass for part of their lunch hour, they're free to do that. Because I exist, every chaplain exists for their First Amendment right to practice their religion. So they could take advantage of that. Then I'd go back to meetings and to work. I often, almost every day, I would end my day at the chapel so that I could end my day with a holy hour. I'd say Vespers. And then I may have evening events, but if I don't have evening events, I would call it a day. And that would be my day job. Goes from Monday to Friday. Saturday I would have off. I would have a time to do some laundry, run errands. And then Sunday, it's very much, you and I have a very similar schedule on Sunday. It's all about mass and being there for all the masses and communicating with each other and communicating with the parishioners. Looks different though when I deploy. Things are very different because I'm with the soldiers 24/7, and it's we go to austere environments, and I'm traveling to bring the soldiers an experience of the sacraments in these austere and often dangerous environments.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about deployment, because so you get sent somewhere, like sometimes there are wars going on. So you could go to Iraq or Afghanistan, or today maybe it'd be Israel or Palestine, who knows? But if you were deployed, like where do you celebrate mass? Like I've been reading the writings of Father Willie Doyle, and so which maybe we'll talk about some saintly chaplains, but like I've been getting a sense of how Father Doyle exercised his priestly ministry on the battlefield back in World War I.
I got to get you in touch with Joe Schuler. He runs Guadalupe Radio Network, and he has a great devotion to Willie Doyle. You guys get along really well.
Oh, for sure, definitely. So yeah, where do you say mass during deployment?
Very good. So it's an austere environment. Oftentimes, it's very expeditionary, and I often just live out of a bag when I'm deployed, because I want to visit and give soldiers, as many soldiers as I can, an experience of the sacraments where they are. I was deployed 5 times to wherever, stand, let's call it that. I mean, all over the Levant, in the Middle East, And I would go from country to country, and my goal would be to visit for 36 to 40 to maybe 36 would be a short visit, 36 hours, but a nicer visit would be maybe 72, 96 hours. And I would set up, my goal was for the soldiers that were at that base, that camp, wherever I might be. My goal was for them to know the chaplain, who's a priest, is there. He's on the ground and he's there for them. And if they want to come and see me, that's great. But if they didn't want to see me, that's fine too. But I feel like my failure would come if they failed to know I was there. As long as they know I was there, I'd be in the chow hall every night before dinner. I'd pass out plates and flatware. I'd say hello to everyone. And I would often say mass 2 hours before dinner. 2 hours before dinner, I would hear confessions for an hour. And then an hour before dinner, I'd say mass. And then it would run right into dinner. And people would get an idea of like, oh, wow, the priest is here. This is great. And I would go from camp to camp using all sorts of means of transportation, because I'll end it with this. I've been to places where I visited for Easter and Christmas. And in between that time, the soldiers that were at that camp, the only priest they ever saw 9 months there was me, when they saw me at Easter and when they saw me at Christmas, which is kind of sad, but it shows you how desperate we are for the numbers.
Yeah. So, where do you say mass then? Is there a chapel? Like, there's that picture of Emil Capon where he's saying mass on the back of a Jeep. Is that something you've ever done?
Oh yeah, often. I've done that. I've done. Oh boy, I've said mass on MRE boxes. The meals ready to eat. They're very sturdy boxes. I'll just stack them high enough to be at a comfortable altar height, and then you make do what you have to say mass. Sometimes I have a very good situation. Sometimes there's a temporary chapel, like something that's made of plywood and a hard standing structure, and the soldiers, it's beautiful because that's their act of devotion to build such a place, to build an altar, and they're very proud of it. They'll come and they'll show me, hey, Padre, we knew you were coming. We built you an altar. We built a cross. You could use this for mass, and it's wonderful. It shows, it's an expression of their faith and their love, while in such an austere environment. But sometimes it's just on a card table, or it's oftentimes I found the most expedient and the best way to do it would be to do it in the chow hall, in the mess tent, in the place where they ate their meals, because it's often one of the cleanest places and it's vacant outside of meal hours. So as long as I'm there before the meal hours, it's vacant, it's relatively quiet, and it's a well-known place. I can leave little index cards on, not to share too much information, but to leave index cards, the place where everybody goes and does business, if you get what I mean. People are going to go there first thing in the morning, probably late at night. So if I go there and if I put these on the door of that place, they're going to see, oh wow, priest is in town. He's saying mass at the dining hall, so they'll know where to find me and how to find me.
Oh yeah. Now, if you're saying mass like in a foreign country, you would still pray for the Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Military Service, right?
Excellent question. So yes, my faculties are through the Archbishop for the Military Services. So it's a very interesting ordinariate when you think about it. If you really want to drill down into the legal specifics of it, he owns one building. He has the Archdiocese of the Military Services has one building in Washington, D.C. That's pretty much it. All of the other places in which he has authority are federal installations. They're Navy bases, they're Air Force bases, they're Army posts. Every ship in the Navy, he has jurisdiction there. He has canonical jurisdiction in those environments. So I pray for the Archbishop for the Military Services when I say mass. I live currently in going to, well, by the time this airs, it'll be Memorial Day and I'll be at Fort Liberty. But when I lived off post, I had lived in Baltimore, Maryland. And when I'd say mass for the people, if I said mass at the parish, of course it was for the local ordinary, Archbishop William Laurie. But if I'm saying mass privately in the chapel, I'm saying mass for Archbishop Laurie, but I'm also I'm remembering out loud. I'm remembering my Archbishop.
So you talked a little while ago about, meeting with soldiers one-on-one. maybe as you go out into deployment and with them, do you see conversions? Because, this is a moment where like there's uncertainty about what is to come. So maybe they've been living a little bit away from God, living kind of maybe a promiscuous life or something. Do you see a lot of people in this moment taking advantage of the grace God is giving them through your priesthood, through coming back to confession and going to mass and all that? Are conversions happening?
I have seen that, and you have to remember, my role as a chaplain is I'm true to the faith. I'm true to my calling as a Catholic priest, and the Army wants me to be a Catholic priest. They don't want me to pretend to be, this Swiss Army knife of faith in giving the faith to each soldier as they want it. Oh, you're Protestant, you're Buddhist, you're Muslim. Like, no, I'm called to be a Catholic priest, and I share the faith as a Catholic priest. And I have seen soldiers who come to me because I'm a Catholic priest, and there can be, I have had those incidents of a bit of a sense of urgency, awakening. There's a lot of time to think. Think about the sacrifices our soldiers make on deployment. Hours and hours of just standing a post on guard duty, and a lot of time to think and a lot of time to reflect. And then out of nowhere, this priest comes and gives them a cup of coffee, and from the chow hall, it's like, hey, how you doing? I came to stand watch with you for a little while. How you making out? How things going over here? And hopefully those little opportunities are, and they have been, those are opportunities. Most chaplains will tell you that they're opportunities for conversation and conversion. But I want to make sure that your listeners understand that I engage soldiers about matters of faith by taking their lead. I'm in their workspace as a chaplain. I'm not a parish priest. This isn't my parish, it's my battalion, and it's their workspace. If they want to ask me questions about the faith, full send, I'm coming at them. But sometimes they don't want to deal with me that way, and that's fine. I'm still a fellow soldier with them. I jump out of airplanes in a lot of units that I've been in, and I'm a safety officer for paratroopers. And if that's all you want to do is talk about paratrooping and this next mission, and we got to draw chutes, and are you going to take care of the drop zone? It's like, that's fine, and I'll have all of that conversation professionally, and we'll never talk about the faith. But as soon as they say, hey, I have a question for you, I want to ask you something as a priest, let's go.
Let's say there's a mom or a dad listening. Their son is going into, let's say, the Navy. Like, what words of advice do you have that for them as parents? And maybe what should they communicate to their child while practicing the faith as they go off to, basic training and all that stuff?
Tell that young soldier, that young sailor, that young airman to get plugged into church as soon as they arrive. I can tell you this. The trainees, even in basic training, they're given 2 hours a week for religious practice. They'll be sent they will put them on a bus and send them to church. And if they want to go, if they don't want to go, they don't have to go. But they got to plug in right away and stay committed to it. And then look around, look to your left and right and say, oh, wow, these soldiers are Catholic. Okay, awesome. And then talk about it and form groups of support with each other. It's like, hey, so you came to mass. Introduce yourself. Yeah, what parish are you from? Where are you from? You have to plug in right away. The saddest thing that I experienced as a military chaplain is, and you see this in the parish, Jack and Jill get married, and then you don't see them in the parish since they got married, and then they have a baby, and now it's like, yeah, we just had a baby, we want to baptize the baby. They haven't been involved in the parish since the day of their wedding. A lot of times I see the soldier, G.I. Joe, and his wife, Jane, they get married, and they don't, they join the Army, and they maybe go to church in basic training, and then they don't think about it again until they want to get married or they have a child. And it's a challenge for soldiers to stay plugged in because we're so transient. We're constantly going from new guy to like not knowing anybody, and then you're there for maybe 36 months, and now you're the oldest person. You have all the knowledge, all the experience at only 36 months, and then you leave again and you're new guy all over again. you got to get involved right away.
Okay, that's great advice. And uh, let's talk a little bit too about military chaplains who could be saints, right? So there are a number of causes. So there's Father Emil Capon. And his cause is kind of rapidly progressing, I think. I think like he'll be a blessed sooner or later. Then there's the case of Father Vincent Capodanno, which my understanding is that cause is kind of stalled and isn't really progressing anymore. Like I think there was some sort of statement. So why is it that a military chaplain should be a saint, and what makes them saintly?
Well, in the case of Father Capon, he lived such a sacrificial life as a priest and a chaplain. His example, it's really closer to martyrdom than anything else. His self-giving love in that situation, a horrible situation of a Chinese prison camp, prisoner of war during the Korean War, and he would steal food to feed the soldiers. He cared for their wounds. He would bury the dead. Can you imagine the task and how horrible it must have been for him to not only take the dead soldiers' bodies, but then with such dignity and grace to give them as dignified a burial as he could. He would disrobe them, wash their clothes, these rags that they were wearing as prisoners, wash them and redistribute these clothes among the living prisoners, because this was the best that they could do. It was just a tremendous sacrificial life on his part. And please God, we pray for his cause and for the cause of Father Capodanno. I do have I'm going to call her certainly a patron to paratroopers, and she's I don't know are you familiar with Saint Gemma Galgani?
Yeah, I know of her. I read like she was a stigmatist, I know too, right? And
yes,
I read her Life and Letters, I think, a few years ago.
Yeah, are you familiar with her connection to paratroopers and skydivers?
I don't think so. No.
It's fascinating, and it's fostered I have such a tremendous devotion to her. Having found out, this prayer card was given to me maybe a year and a half ago. It was given to me by a priest, and I took some interest in her, but nothing really deep until I found out. I was like, wait a minute, because I knew what you just mentioned, that she was a stigmatist, a mystic, and she suffered greatly. But here's the best part. When I read this bio that she was the patron saint of paratroopers and skydivers, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a paratrooper, I'm a skydiver. What is this about? And it turned out that during the Second World War, there was a community of Passionist nuns that were near the airborne school, the place where the Italian paratroopers trained. And they took second-class relics, pieces of St. Gemma's clothing, and they sewed them behind the airborne wings. Like, these are my airborne wings. They sewed them behind the airborne wings of the new paratroopers, and they told them to pray to her. She'll take care of you, pray for her intercession. And she became the patron saint of paratroopers and skydivers.
Oh, wow. So yeah, that's incredible. So you obviously invoke her intercession. Do you say like a little prayer? Is there a prayer on that back of that prayer card, or do you just say, yes, Saint Gemma, pray for us?
I pray for her. I pray in a particular way for her to lead us to love through suffering. That was really her message. She loved the Lord in his suffering. She received the grace of mystically receiving his wounds while being protected by the mantle of the Blessed Mother in the presence of Christ himself, to receive these mystical wounds of the stigmata. And I think she's a saint for our age, and certainly in her love for purity and her love for suffering, and what a great saint for young people. I have custody of a first-class relic of hers, and I'm just very devoted to her.
Well, that's wonderful. That's great. Well, this has been a very insightful conversation. I think a little bit just into the life of a military chaplain. For where I serve in the Diocese of Green Bay, we had released one priest to be a chaplain, and he's since now come back to the diocese. There's another one that was co-sponsored. There might be Yeah, there was another one co-sponsored who's awaiting to go. And then there's another one currently serving. So we have done, a little bit of tithing, one priest at a time, maybe it goes,
We
but
appreciate it. That's excellent. We need that. We need more
yeah.
of it.
And so what year did you join as a chaplain?
So I joined in 14. I was 10 years a priest. As a matter of fact, it's kind of interesting. We've come by the airing of this, half of my priesthood, 10 years of my priesthood was home in my home diocese, and half of my priesthood now has been in the archdiocese for the military services. I came in December of 14.
Okay. And then, like, did you ever make it to San Diego or anything like that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because there's a priest from Green Bay. His name's Father Terry Lacombe. He was, I think, stationed out in San Diego he was like an older gent, kind of serving as a military chaplain, but
So here's the beautiful thing. We have great priest fraternity in the archdiocese of the military. We make it a point at least once a year to get together as a presbyterate. And I had been to several of those presbyteral meetings out in San Diego. And I think if he's the face that I'm putting with that name, I think I know Father Terry.
sure, yeah. The other one that you might have known was Father Bill Bruner from the Diocese of Green Bay, Wisconsin.
I think I've heard the name. I don't know.
Yeah. And then Father Matt Fawcett currently is serving too.
So Father Matt Fawcett, I know very well because we served together at Fort Liberty.
Okay, well, there you have it. So there you go. So those are the priests I know personally that have been chaplains, and yeah, that's wonderful. So, well, anything else that you want to communicate? Anything else you want to share? Like, I know we covered a whole wide gamut of topics, but
Well, I appreciate the opportunity though to push vocations. If you're a young man thinking about the priesthood and thinking about serving God and country, if you're a priest who have a heart for God and soldiers, then you can get in touch with me at fr.UncleSam on Instagram. That's probably the best way to get me, or priestrecruitereast@gmail.com. I'll still monitor that email, even though I'm out of the job, but I can certainly get you in touch. And I'd encourage you to reach out to Father Tyone. He's the vocation director at the Archdiocese of the Military Services. And that's the way that we're going to bring soldiers to God and God through soldiers as in recruiting new chaplains. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
yeah, well, thank you, Father, for joining me today. And yeah, go give him a follow over on Instagram. I think you'll enjoy his content. I know I enjoy seeing it on the feed when I'm perusing. So thanks so much for your time, Father Peter.
If you liked today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. And don't forget to stay up to date with what Father Edward is doing by following him on Facebook, X, or Instagram at the handle @FrEdwardLooney. Thanks for listening, and please join Father Edward again next time for another inspiring conversation.